My brother slammed me into the fridge, then kneaded me so hard my nose broke. I was bleeding, shaking, reaching for the phone until Mom ripped it away. "It's just a scratch," she snapped. My dad, drama queen, he muttered. They had no idea what I'd do next. Hey, Reddit. I never thought pain could sound like silence. But that night, when I lay on the kitchen floor bleeding and no one said a word to help me, that's when I learned what real pain was. It started like most nights did in my house with shouting. My brother Ethan always had a temper. He'd snap over small things, a missing charger, a misplaced glass. But that evening, it wasn't about something small. It was about me. I'd just come home from school, exhausted, and noticed he'd taken my laptop without asking. When I confronted him, he didn't yell. Not at first, he laughed. "You think you own anything in this house?" he said, pushing a laptop toward me. "It's not yours. Nothing here is." I tried to walk away, but he grabbed my arm. And before I could even react, he shoved me back. I hit the fridge hard. The cold metal slammed into my shoulder, and the pain shot through me like fire. "Ethan, stop!" I shouted, but he didn't. He stepped closer, his face twisted with something I didn't recognize. Rage or maybe satisfaction. And then he kneed me hard. There was a crack. Then a rush of warmth down my face. I stumbled backward, hands trembling as I touched my nose and felt blood pour through my fingers. It wasn't just pain. It was disbelief. He'd actually done it. My own brother. I fell to my knees, reaching for the phone on the counter. Everything felt distant, echoing, my heartbeat in my ears, my vision blurring. But before I could dial, Mom stormed into the kitchen. "What's going on here?" she snapped. I looked up at her through tears. "Mom, he hit me." He broke my. She grabbed the phone from my hand. "Oh, stop it. It's just a scratch." Her voice was cold. Sharp, like she was more annoyed than alarmed. I couldn't believe it. Blood was running down my chin and she just didn't care. "Mom, I need to go to the hospital," I said, shaking. She rolled her eyes. "You're such a drama queen. Always exaggerating. Look what you did. You made your brother upset again." I made him upset. My father appeared in the doorway holding his coffee mug like he was watching a TV show. He glanced at my face, then muttered, "You probably provoked him." That's all. No concern, no movement toward me, just words that hit harder than any knee ever could. I pressed a towel against my nose, trying to stop the bleeding. My whole body was shaking. I wasn't even sure if it was from pain or from how cold the room suddenly felt. Ethan stood by the fridge, arms crossed. No remorse, no guilt, just silence. And for a moment, I realized something I had been too scared to admit for years. This wasn't home. It was a battlefield. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the bathroom floor with tissues and ice pressed to my face. The mirror reflected a stranger. Swollen nose, red eyes, trembling hands. I looked at myself and whispered, "You're not safe here." And that was the moment everything changed. The next morning, I packed a bag. Just the essentials, clothes, my sketchbook, my phone charger. I moved quietly because if they woke up, they'd stop me. For a second, I hesitated at the door. My mom's words echoed in my head. "It's just a scratch." My dad's voice, too. Drama queen. And then I realized if I stayed, that would be the last thing I'd ever be. Their drama, their punching bag. I slipped out before sunrise. The air was cold, but it felt clean. Real. Every step away from that house felt like breathing for the first time. I didn't have a plan, but I had a decision. I was never going back. I went to the police first. They took one look at me, my swollen face, my bruised shoulder, and asked if I had anyone who could take me in. I told them no, and the officer, a woman maybe in her 40s, looked at me the way I'd been waiting for someone to look at me my entire life, like I wasn't overreacting, like I mattered. She helped me file a report. She called a social worker. And for the first time, I wasn't silenced. I wasn't dismissed. Someone actually listened. I spent the next few nights at a youth shelter. They gave me a bed, food, and most importantly, safety. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the bruises fade a little more. But what didn't fade was the fire inside me. I realized that I'd spent my whole life waiting for my family to protect me. But I didn't need their protection. I needed my freedom. So that's what I decided to fight for. I went back to school, started therapy, got a part-time job, and I promised myself one day I'd build a life where no one could ever take my voice away again. It's been years since that night. Sometimes I still dream about it. The fridge, the shouting, the silence. But when I wake up, I look around my own apartment, see the sunlight through the window, and remember, I got out. I survived. And that's something they'll never be able to take from me. They used to call me a drama queen. Now I call myself something else, a survivor. And they had no idea what I'd do next. Because what I did next didn't just change my life, it changed theirs, too. They say time heals everything. But time doesn't heal, it reveals. It shows you who you really are and who never deserved a place in your story. When I left home that morning, I didn't just walk away from a house. I walked away from the version of myself that still believed I was powerless. The social worker who helped me after the incident became my lifeline. Her name was Claire, the kind of person who didn't flinch when you told her the truth. She listened without interrupting, without disbelief. And that made all the difference. She helped me press charges against my brother for assault. At first, I was terrified. The idea of sitting in a courtroom facing the people who had laughed at my pain. It made me physically sick. But Claire looked at me and said something I'll never forget. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something else matters more. And she was right. When the day came, I walked into that courtroom with my head high. My brother sat across the room, arms crossed, wearing that same smug smirk he always did when he thought he'd get away with something. Mom was there, too, stone-faced, as if I were the one on trial. Dad didn't even show up. The judge listened quietly as I spoke. My voice trembled at first, but then I felt something rise inside me. Years of swallowed words. Years of silence finally breaking. I told them everything. When I finished, the room was silent. For once, no one could dismiss me. Not the smirks, not the whispers, not the lies. Because truth, when finally spoken, has its own gravity. The verdict came a week later. My brother was sentenced to probation and mandatory anger therapy. It wasn't a long sentence, but it was enough because for the first time in his life, he was being held accountable, and for the first time in mine, I didn't feel invisible. The months that followed were hard, but also healing. Therapy became my safe space. Every session peeled back layers of guilt I didn't even know I'd been carrying. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped replaying the question. Why didn't they care? Because the truth was simple. Their failure to love me wasn't my fault. It was their limitation. So instead of waiting for an apology that would never come, I decided to build something better. A life where I was finally safe. I finished school, got a scholarship, and moved to another city. I found a small apartment, quiet, sunlit, with plants on the window ledge. Every morning, I'd make coffee, open the curtains, and feel gratitude instead of fear. It wasn't perfect. There were nights I still cried. Days when I missed the idea of family. Not the people themselves, but what family should have been. But every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone stronger, someone alive, someone free. Years passed. Life got better. I started volunteering at a youth center, helping kids who'd gone through what I had. The first time a young girl told me, "No one believes me." I looked her in the eyes and said, "I do." And I meant it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't payback. It's becoming the person you needed when you were younger. One afternoon after a workshop at the center, I got an unexpected email. The subject line read, "It's Mom." My chest tightened. It had been almost 6 years since I'd heard from her. The message was short. "Your father's not well. He's been asking about you. Please, if you can come home." I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, but another part of me, the part that had spent years healing, knew I had to face this. Not for them. For me. When I pulled up to the old house, it looked smaller than I remembered. The walls that once towered over me now felt fragile. The door, the same one that had slammed in my face so many times, creaked as I opened it. Mom was standing in the hallway, older, tired. She looked at me as if seeing a ghost. "Hi," I said softly. She swallowed hard. "You came." I did. We stood there in silence until she whispered, "I don't deserve this." I nodded. "You're right, but I needed it." She led me to the living room. Dad was in a chair, frail and quiet. When he looked up and saw me, his eyes filled with tears. For the first time in my life, he didn't look angry or disappointed. He just looked sorry. His voice was barely a whisper. "I should have protected you." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Yeah," I said quietly. "You should have." We both sat there, two people who finally ran out of excuses. That moment didn't erase the past. It didn't undo the pain, but it did something else. It closed the door on it. Because forgiveness isn't letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself off the leash. When I left that night, Mom hugged me for the first time in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Now, when I think about my past, I don't see a victim. I see a survivor who refused to stay silent. I see a girl who turned her pain into purpose, who built her own family out of kindness and courage. They once told me I was just a drama queen. But I think they finally see what I really am. A woman who learned that silence doesn't mean peace and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and start